Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Rajagacharya Ashtotara Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Grantha Raja Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. Toute gloire de vos assemblées. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Thank you, Vishnu-chan. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so this morning we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, and we're in the 10th canto, chapter 7, verse, should be 29, isn't it? 29. Okay, perfect. Alright, so let's go ahead and sing the verse together, call and response. Tam antarikshat patitam shilayam. Tam antarikshat patitam shilayam. Vishirna sarva vayavam karalam. Vishirna sarva vayavam karalam. Puram yatarudra sharena vidham. Puram yatarudra sharena vidham. Striyo rudatyo dadrishu sameta. Striyo rudatyo dadrishu sameta. Tamantarikshat patitam shilayam. Vashirna sarva vayavam karalam. Puram yatarudra sharena vidham. Striyo rudatyo dadrishu sameta. Somebody can chant next.
Tamantarikshat patitanam patitam shilayam.
Tamantarikshat patitam shilayam.
Vishirna sarvavayavam karalam.
Vishirna sarva vayavam karalam.
Puram yatarudra sarena vidam.
Puram yatarudra sharena vidham. Striyo rudatyo dadrishu sameta. Tamantarikshat patitam shilayam. Vishirna sarva vayavam karalam. Puram yatarudra sharena vidham. Striyo rudatyo dadrishu sameta.
Tamantarikshat patitam shilayam.
Tamantarikshat patitam shilayam.
Vishirna sarva vayavam karalam.
Vishirna sarva vayavam karalam.
Puram Puram yata rudra sharena vidam.
Puram yata rudra sharena vidham.
Striyo rudatyo radrishu sametaha.
Striyo rudatyo dadrishu sameta. Vaishnavis? Okay, we'll go ahead and do the word-for-word translation. Tam, unto the demon Trinavarta, antarikshat, from outer space, patitam, fallen, shilayam, on a slab of stone, vishirna, scattered, separated, sarva avayavam, all the parts of his body, karalam, very fierce hands and legs, puram, the place of Tripurasura, yata, as Rudra Sharena, by the arrow of Lord Shiva, Vidham, pierced, Striyaha, all the women, the gopis, Rudatyaha, although crying, because Krishna was separated from them. Dadrishuhu, they saw in front of them. Sametaha, all together. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. While the gopis who had gathered were crying for Krishna, the demon fell from the sky onto a big slab of stone, his limbs dislocated, as if he had been pierced by the arrow of Lord Shiva, like Tripurasura. Purport. In transcendental life, as soon as devotees of the Lord merge in lamentation, they immediately experience the Lord's transcendental activities and merge in transcendental bliss. Actually, such devotees are always in transcendental bliss, and such apparent calamities provide a further impetus for that bliss. Now, before trying to speak anything on this verse, I'd like to recite some prayers to the previous spiritual masters, that we may have their blessings to speak on Prabhupada's verse and purport, and we may be able to understand something from it and explain something from it. Om Gana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raguna Tanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitanscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'll read the translation one last time. While the gopis who had gathered were crying for Krishna, the demon fell from the sky onto a big slab of stone. His limbs dislocated, as if he had been pierced by the arrow of Lord Shiva, like Tripurasura. So, in this verse, we're just hearing the end of pastime, where Lord Krishna faces a demon, a whirlwind demon, a tornado demon, named Trinavarta, who had swept a young child Krishna far up into the sky, and all of the cowherd boys and girls, or at least the cowherd girls and cowherd ladies, they were able to see this, and they became very, very scared. And here we hear that they were crying for Krishna. And in the word for word, it says they were crying because Krishna was separated from them in this very dangerous situation. And so this purport really addresses one of the, you could say, one of the mysteries of transcendental life, which is that even in the Lord's fully spiritual pastimes, and even in the spiritual world, in Goloka Vrindavan, the original planet of Krishna in the spiritual world, we find that the devotees there, they actually experience sometimes pain, a kind of pain or sorrow or lamentation, as it's stated here in Prabhupada's purport. So how can this be? Because we hear a lot from the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita about the harsh realities of material existence, how in this material world living entities are suffering from the threefold miseries, the three different kinds of prominent categories of miseries in the material world. They're suffering because of various environmental conditions, such as heat or cold or snowstorms or tornadoes or various other kinds of natural disasters. We hear how they're suffering from their own bodies and minds. Our own bodies and minds are often a source of suffering. We have some disease, or we have some ailment or injury, or old age gradually advances upon us and we lose our faculties to move about freely and to see and hear effectively. And in so many different ways, the physical body gives us different kinds of pains and miseries throughout our life. And the psychological body, the subtle body, is of course a source of great anxieties. We sometimes have intense anxieties or various kinds of psychological disorders that prevent us from functioning in a normal, healthy way as we go about our life. And there's also suffering caused by other living entities, which is probably the greatest of all. In various kinds of ways, there are flies and mosquitoes and ticks and various kinds of creatures, or even very microscopic organisms, parasites and viruses and bacteria that can cause us so much pain. And other human beings, what to speak of other human beings, they cause us a great deal of pain, don't they? And so we're accustomed to hearing about these realities of material life. And we hear about the spiritual world as being Vaikuntha, a place where there's no anxiety, a place that's free from suffering and pain. And yet sometimes we see, as in this case, that there are very dear and close devotees of Krishna. They're very dear to Krishna. They've dedicated their whole life, heart and soul to Krishna. And yet, we're hearing that they're experiencing some pain and suffering and lamentation, fearful of being separated from Krishna. So, how do we understand this great mystery of transcendental life? Well, in love there is always some sacrifice. Prabhupada would say that the closest form of love that you can find in the material world, which has some resemblance to real love, to real spiritual love, is the love between, the love that a mother feels for her children. And Prabhupada gives the example of how mother voluntarily accepts pain for making the child comfortable, that sometimes it's very difficult to hold a baby or a young child on the mother's shoulder, because after some time the back starts to feel some pain and the shoulder becomes achy or painful. And but the mother just continues to hold and may shift him to the other side and shift him back to try to bear this pain. But actually, because she has so much love for the child, she hardly even thinks of the pain. That pain actually is part of her happiness in taking care of her beloved child. And we also even have some experience in our life here in the material world. Sometimes the scriptures refer to the material world as a kind of perverted reflection of the spiritual world, because everything that we experience here, relationships and etc., it all ultimately has its source in the spiritual world. It didn't just come from nowhere. So it's based on the original pure form of that thing in the spiritual world. And we find that in popular movies today, particularly where there's a movie centered around some romance, that if you go to the movies and you see a movie about a young boy and a girl who meet up, and then the whole movie is just 2 hours long of just them having a really nice relationship together. Actually, those kinds of movies, they don't really attract people's attention. But generally, a romantic movie will have so many ups and downs, and the characters, they meet and they just fall passionately in love, and then there's some misunderstanding, and then it's like, no, it's not what you think, I can explain. But then the other person becomes so upset that they move away to a different part of the world, and they're in separation, and the viewers are just feeling so much pain. But actually that pain there's a kind of rasa, or pleasing taste in that pain, that actually attracts people to go and see those movies. And if it's just a movie where they fall in love, they get married, they have a perfect life together, then everybody's falling asleep 30 minutes in. And it's not going to rack up the millions of dollars that the producers would have hoped for. But actually, these romantic films where we're going through so much pain, somehow it's an enjoyable experience for the living entities, because ultimately living entities just want to have fun. They want to have some experience where anandamayopyasat, our nature is to experience happiness and bliss. And actually there's a way in which drama produces a feeling of happiness. The classic image of drama is there's a face, a mask, right, with a smiling face, and then just next to it there's a similar mask with a frowny face like this. And so when people go into a drama or a movie, they know they're going to get lots of moments where there's this sadness happening and they're feeling some kind of lamentation, feelings of lamentation or hopelessness evoked in their heart, yet somehow it's a pleasing experience. So what is the source of this? So ultimately this comes originally from the spiritual world, where Krishna, with so many complex, loving relationships with his devotees, and his devotees are serving him in so many ways. Well, in order that the loving relationships are at the height of all experience and at the height of all ecstasy and bliss, actually by the arrangement of the spiritual energy, sometimes Krishna and his beloved devotees are together, and sometimes Krishna and his beloved devotees are separated in some way. And this serves to just enhance the experience of the relationship and give so many, as Prabhupada says, impetuses. He says, actually the devotees are always in transcendental bliss, and such apparent calamities, they provide a further impetus for that bliss. So udipan, it's kind of a stimulant that just in so many ways allows the love of a devotee for Krishna to be displayed and to be experienced and to be shown. And so although we do also experience a kind of perverted reflection of that within the material world, it's important to note that these two worlds are like the difference between these two worlds is like the difference between gold and iron. And that spiritual world, everything is composed of eternality, bliss, and full knowledge. And that's the nature of everything that's happening there. Whereas in the material world, even what may taste nice for a little while, it's temporary, and it generally leads to not just a seemingly miserable, but a truly miserable result. And also we are in a situation where we find ourselves in ignorance regularly. We're unable to understand so many things. But in the spiritual world, all such activities, the very platform or foundation on which they're based is full knowledge and bliss and complete eternality without any occurrence of temporary, things being there for a little while and then your beloved is gone forever and no, what do you do now? So it's of a completely different nature. So in this way, by maybe making a little bit of a comparison with our experience in the material world, we can sort of gain a little bit of an intellectual understanding of how this mystery, may play out in the spiritual world, or understanding of this mystery. But ultimately, our intelligence can only take us so far. And so Srila Prabhupada, he explains about the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, which is the mainstay of the Hare Krishna movement, to chant the names of Krishna in the form of the Hare Krishna mantra. That actually by chanting this name of Krishna, ultimately all spiritual truths are revealed. He says that by chanting the name of Krishna sincerely and attentively in a regular practice every day, then the form of Krishna will actually automatically be revealed to us through the chanting of the name. And then progressively, one by one, then the qualities of Krishna will be revealed just in the chanting of Krishna's name. And then the pastimes and transcendental activities of Krishna, they'll be revealed just through the simple, dedicated chanting of Krishna's names, because this name of Krishna is not an ordinary vibration that simply represents something else, as in the material world. I say the word water, it doesn't actually have the capacity to quench my thirst itself, this word, but it represents and indicates some object in this world that I can try to approach that object and have my thirst quenched. But the word itself doesn't actually have any inherent relationship with the object it represents. However, in the spiritual world, and particularly with the name of Krishna, there's actually no difference between Krishna and Krishna himself. Krishna is the name. So when I say the name Krishna, I'm not just using a sound vibration that's arbitrary and that gives some indication of a person named Krishna. But actually the moment that we say Krishna, Krishna is actually present. He's present in this transcendental sound form. And so that's how through the chanting of the name Krishna, everything can automatically be revealed. But Prabhupada also goes on to elaborate that there's also a quality to the utterance of Hare Krishna. It's not that every way that we might say it is of the same quality. So Prabhupada indicates that according to our level of consciousness, and according to the state of our consciousness, which can in many ways be measured through looking at the 10 offenses of the holy name and understanding in what ways are we possibly making offenses to the holy name or offenses to Krishna in the way that our consciousness is arranged, in the way that we're acting in the world and speaking to people and interacting in the world with Krishna and with Krishna's devotees, that according to that, the name will manifest to more or lesser degrees of its eternal fullness, according to how we're chanting. And so, in this way, Prabhupada, he highlighted for us that there's a need to know what the 10 offenses in chanting the Hare Krishna mantra are, and to look at ourselves and see how much we may or may not be, I'll say guilty maybe, of kind of making such offenses. And for anybody who's come to Mangalarati once or twice at least, you'll notice that every morning we recite the 10 offenses to the holy name. And there's actually a lot of meaning in each offense to the holy name, and there's a lot that we can elaborate on them. And of course in the morning we don't take like 20 minutes to have class on the holy name, but if we kind of have that sort of wealth of understanding in our mind, then we can take that as an opportunity to really remind ourselves of the meaning of each offense as we're reciting down the list. But there's also a way in which I might sometimes get into a mode of just reciting it kind of mechanically, and it just becomes a mechanical ritual that I do every morning, and I forget to sort of take the responsibility of bringing my consciousness and mind to be present for that moment, and reminding me just before I sit down to chant the holy names during the japa meditation period, of what is the purpose and meaning of that. So I thought that we would just go through the holy name, the offenses to the holy names, and just kind of elaborate a little bit on them. I find it very edifying to kind of go back again and again from time to time to sort of refresh their meaning and their purpose. So the first offense to the holy name is to blaspheme or criticize the devotees of the Lord who have dedicated their lives to preaching the holy names of the Lord and to expanding the Sankirtan movement of chanting the holy names. And so this is definitely a very important one, because it really has a lot to do with our attitude and our mood, our ability to appreciate, to look at devotees at whatever stage they're at, and appreciate the qualities that they bring to Lord Chaitanya's movement. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he writes that one of the 6 Goswamis made a decision one day that, you know what, I'm just not going to criticize devotees no matter what the circumstance that comes up. I'm never going to make a critical remark about devotees. I'm just going to try and appreciate the good things that they do and the good qualities that they have. And so that's bona fide, that anytime we can make that decision, we can choose to sign a contract, write a contract up for ourselves and sign it that, okay, from this day forward, I'm never going to criticize devotees. And Prabhupada elaborates on this first offense also one time. He says that it's not only an offense to criticize devotees, but it's also an offense to hear criticism of devotees. That's also included. So if we find ourselves in a situation where somebody has begun blaspheming or criticizing a devotee, if we just kind of stay there and hear it and allow our consciousness to absorb in that sound vibration, we're also making this first offense to the holy name. And we can give the example, a very positive example of Jayananda Prabhu. He was actually, one of the qualities that he was well known for among his peers, that his peers had noticed, is that if he was in a room with some devotees and somebody began to speak some criticism of somebody else, he would just immediately be gone. You wouldn't even notice that he left. You'd just be like, oh, where'd Jayananda go? Oh, somebody spoke some criticism. He just immediately would head out of the room. He wouldn't entertain that kind of talk for even a moment. So we have full permission to follow in the footsteps of such devotees and protect our consciousness from, because you know, if you start hearing criticism of people, then you actually lose the ability to appreciate them. And we don't want to lose that ability, because that's an important part of being able to have gratitude and humility. So we don't want to lose that quality. The second offense to the holy name is to consider the name of Vishnu to be on an equal platform as the names of Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, or other demigods. And Prabhupada makes a nice statement about this. He says, actually, it is nonsense to think that there are many gods. If there are many gods, then there is no meaning of God. Ekam eva advitiyam. The Vedas say God is one, without any second, without any competitor. If God has a competitor, then he's not God. Right? Does that make sense? If God has a competitor for the position of being the Supreme Lord, he's not really God, right? So how can there be two? So the definition of God is that he is supreme. So there's only one. So yeah, the very meaning of the word supreme loses its meaning if we consider a demigod or any other kind of ordinary living entity, that chanting that person's name, chanting that demigod's name will have the same effect as chanting Krishna's name. And so sometimes there's a philosophy that actually you can chant any name, whether it's Krishna or Ganesh or Shiva or any demigod's name, and it's just the same. It's just the same, they give the same result. However, if I say that, oh, it's okay if you want to go to Paris, if you want to go to Lyon, if you want to go to Italy, just take any road. Any road will take you to Italy. It doesn't matter whether you go north or south or west. Any road will take you to Italy. So is it true? So, so chanting the name of Krishna, because it's a supreme name, it's the name of the Supreme. And that name of Krishna, they come in different forms. There's Krishna, there's Rama, there's Vishnu, but they all designate the one Supreme Person. And so that's of a uniquely supreme and transcendental quality. And Prabhupada elaborates on the second offense. In one purport, in the second canto, he says, there's a second part to this offense, which is that it's also an offense to the holy name if we think that names for the Supreme Lord, as they've been revealed in other parts of the world, in other traditions, in other religious, like authentic religious traditions. He said if we think those names are less than the names of Vishnu or Krishna or Rama, then we're also making the second offense. That actually all of the names of the Supreme Lord, whether they're revealed in this religion or that religion, if it's an authentic religion, and they're simply repeating that name that has been passed down to them, then that name that's the name of God. So it's equally transcendental. It's equally powerful. So it's also an offense to think like, oh, if you're chanting Allah, that's not like chanting Vishnu. That's not good enough. That's lesser potency. Actually, that's an offense. As Prabhupada describes, the one Supreme Lord, he reveals himself in different parts of the world at different times, in different ways. But if we're, the attitude that Bhaktivinoda Thakur suggests, who's in our line of teachers, is that we can look at other traditions and religions and see that, oh, this person is worshipping my same master, but just in a slightly different way. Okay. So we'll just go for a few more offenses because we don't have enough time to treat all of them. So the third offense in chanting the holy names of the Lord is to, what is it? To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. And this is a very interesting one. And in some other places in Prabhupada's books, he translated this third offense as thinking the spiritual master to be a common man. Thinking the spiritual master to be an ordinary person. Well, what's the connection between those two things? It seems like two different statements. Does anybody see? Christopher?
Because the reason why we listen to the spiritual master, when we don't understand him, he's the representative of God.
Mm-hmm.
So we better listen to him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So if we're the spiritual master, as a representative of Krishna, is considered a direct manifestation of Krishna. That this is how Krishna manifests. Krishna is within the heart as the Chaitya Guru. He's capable of guiding us from within, but because we're very externally oriented in our current conditioned state, he also comes in a very tangible form that we can see right on the outside of us through our eyes, we can hear with our ears, even though we've got material eyes and ears. He manifests as the spiritual master. So the spiritual master is always a servant, a humble servant of Krishna. He never thinks he's the Supreme Lord or presents himself as God, yet he is a manifestation of Krishna. And so, if I take the spiritual master as an ordinary person, then there's not really much reason for me to follow that person's instructions or to consider that I should absolutely follow that person's instructions. It's just like if anybody, your friend or something, gives you an instruction, you'll be like, okay, I'll think about that and I'll decide whether that's a relevant or meaningful instruction for me. I'll decide if I'm going to do that or not. I'll analyze that. But since the spiritual master, the words of the spiritual master are as good as hearing Krishna's words directly, then we don't take that instruction as an ordinary instruction. We accept that instruction as our life and soul, that we absolutely carry it out as far as our best ability will allow us. And so yeah, and Prabhupada also points out that why is it an offense to disobey the order of the spiritual master? Well, for one thing, we voluntarily accepted to place ourselves under the tutelage and instruction and direction of that spiritual master. So it's not something that was actually imposed upon us, you know. So we took the time, we studied the spiritual master, And then we voluntarily submitted that, yes, this person, I accept this person as my spiritual master, and that this person, I give them like full power to direct me in my life. Well, not that I'm giving them power, but it's a voluntary decision that I'm putting myself under this person. And so nobody forced me to do that. So then once we take initiation, we're making that vow that I'm accepting this person as a direct manifestation of Krishna in my life. And so if I then kind of turn back around and start seeing the spiritual master as a common person, and I just take his instructions as, well, I'll think about it, and then, you know, if I think it's a good idea, then I'll follow him. And that's going to be an offense to the holy name. And any of these offenses is going to impede us from progressing in Krishna consciousness and progressing in the chanting of the holy names. Okay. So, I'd like to jump ahead and talk about, since we don't have time to discuss all of them, I'd like to jump ahead and talk about the 10th offense. So the 10th offense to the holy name is, what is the 10th offense? You tell me.
To maintain material attachments.
Yeah.
Oh
wait, there's something before it. To not have complete faith in the chanting of the holy names, and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. See, it's not so easy to remember the offenses where we don't do them one by one. It's like, what's number 7? Like, well, let me start with number 1, and they'll tell you number 7 in a moment.
Just become like autopilot.
Yeah, autopilot. And you know, it occurred to me that hearing this one, we might feel a little bit discouraged because maintaining material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions, you might think, oh my gosh, it's an offense to have material attachments. My God, I'm so offensive. Like, I'm just offensive every moment of every day. How can I possibly chant properly? I'm so saturated with this offense. I have so many material desires, so many material attachments. And I heard HG Prabhu give one explanation of this offense that I found very eye-opening. And in his explanation, he put emphasis on this word, maintaining material attachments. And he said, actually, maintaining is a very active thing. And you can think of, for example, maintaining a garden. How much work does it take to maintain a garden? Does it take any work to maintain a garden? Does it? Yeah? How much do you have to do? Maybe like once a month you got to go out there and spend a couple hours? No, it's like every day you've got to be out there in the garden cultivating, you know, the seedlings, and then removing the weeds, and you got to water again, and then okay, you might have to apply some copper or some ash or something if there's some insects, and then there's the whole harvesting process. And it's very involved, and so maintaining actually is a very active thing. So really our real problem is not so much that we have material attachments. Our real problem is when we actually are maintaining those material attachments. In other words, we have material desires because we want to have material desires. We don't actually want to give up our material desires. I don't know if you've ever had this experience. I have. You can let me know if it's ever happened to you. I've had the experience where I was struggling with a material desire, and I gave in to the desire again, and I was so frustrated that, why do I have this material desire? I really want to give it up. I just really, really want to give it up. And then it occurred to me that I should pray to Krishna to give up this material desire. Like, Krishna, please take this material desire away from me. And then just as I was going to like fold my hands and make this prayer, I was like, wait a minute, hold on, not so fast. Maybe we should think about this again. Maybe this isn't a good idea. Have you ever had that experience? Yeah. I've had the experience a number of occasions. It's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Do I want to give it up or do I not want to give it up? It's like as soon as it comes to actually making a serious effort to give it up, it's like, oh wait, maybe I should rethink this. I'm acting too hastily. Like, let's put it off till next week. So in this way, we might be able to observe that there's a way in which we actually do actively maintain material desires. And my mind, he wants to maintain these material desires because he thinks like, if I give up, if I don't have the desire anymore, then I won't go for that thing anymore. If I don't go for it, then I don't get to experience the pleasure. So it's like, even though these material desires and endlessly pursuing them causes us so much pain, still we want to keep them. We want to keep them. The mind is convinced, and the false ego is convinced that there's some value in this. I get some taste in this, and I don't want to give it up. And so if we, in a sense, become willing accomplices in the perpetual maintenance of our material desires, and we don't sincerely take those steps to at least gradually give them up and challenge ourselves, step into out of the comfort zone, and where we're challenging ourselves to give up more and more our attachment to thinking that I am this body, all of these things in relation to this body is mine, and I'm putting up my fence to maintain my own little individual kingdom, that nobody's allowed to cross this side of the fence, not even you, Krishna, don't step in here, so really for this 10th offense, the key is sincerity, to having the sincerity of being willing to, one after the other, eliminate those things in our life which are preventing us from advancing in devotional service, even if we really would like to keep them. And then on the other hand, being willing to accept things in our life, bring them into our life, practices and etc., which are really favorable for our devotional service, favorable for our advancement, even if we kind of don't want them to come in, and we're scared at the thought that, oh no, this thing is going to come, it's going to take away all my video game time or whatever. It's going to take away all my YouTube and Facebook time. Like, no. But we let Krishna fill our life with these things which are favorable for devotional service. And just like a gardener taking out the bad weeds, we accept to actively recognize what is hindering my devotional service, and taking that maybe slightly painful step to put it aside. And so if we're making this sincere endeavor one by one to give ourselves to that process, then we can move away from that 10th offense and be less and less affected by that. Okay, so I apologize that we didn't get to go through all the offenses, but there's a few, and maybe we have time for one reflection or question, or does anybody have anything?
If I can, nobody else wants to chant Prabhu.
No, go ahead.
Okay, Christopher.
Interesting in the word maintaining is like, to maintain attachments means someone is trying to take something from us. Like Krishna is taking away our bad habits, then we should just let him do. And also I had a reflection about to disobey the orders of the spiritual master. I had two more points, but they are quite, it doesn't need to elaborate on it. There's one, I think it's the husband of Govinda Devidasi, no? And he said one day he made like a picture or something like that, which said, well, it's Prabhupada, and he says, this man saved the world. And then Prabhupada said, it's a very, when you look at it, nobody kind of notices it. And I think he told to his wife as this particular devotee, it's a very big offense, actually. Because this man Prabhu was just like a man. He left the movement afterwards.
Oh,
I
really?
don't know if he came back or not.
Huh.
And also about, I had a question, maybe you don't know, like about I heard Prabhupada say in a class, I mean it doesn't it's not enter in contradiction, I think, with what you said, that in a class that many people, or like they have God, like for example, different religions there is in the world. But Prabhupada was tracing the point that, well, I don't mean to put it down, but like it's a little bit like less elaborated Krishna consciousness. Like he said, we know the name of God, we know the address, we know his mother.
Yeah.
So we got the full information like that. So
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see that. So yeah, even like I came through yoga or like in personal background. So it's like a later.
Yeah. Yeah, Prabhupada, he was not hesitant to very clearly and scientifically make distinction between Krishna consciousness and other manifestations of, like religions in the world. He gave the example, for example, of a dictionary. You may have the full Oxford English Dictionary, and then on the other hand, you may have an abridged English dictionary, which is like a pocket-sized dictionary. And if you look at the differences in the definition, the full version has very elaborate descriptions of each word, and the abridged version may just have a sentence or two. And there will also be words which are not found in the abridged dictionary. And so Prabhupada said that the Vedas, they're like the full Oxford English dictionary. And what other religions, whether it's Christianity or Islam, they have, basically it's like you can think of their books as being like the abridged dictionary, is that you can find many essences which are essentially the same, the base message that one should love God with all one's heart, all one's mind, all one's soul, is the same basic message across all great religions. You should surrender to God. Don't collect treasures in the material world, collect your treasures in the spiritual world, devotional treasures. But Prabhupada wouldn't mince his words about this subject. It was very clear that in Krishna consciousness there's a very scientific, very full and complete scientific explanation of God. And he's pointed out how it's people in the modern age particularly, they want to understand things in a scientific way. So they want to understand any subject scientifically. They're not inclined to just accept something out of sentiment. And so really what the world needs today, more than anything, is the Krishna consciousness movement, is the very full and complete elaboration on the science of God and the science of devotional service, how to connect with God, what is the ultimate goal, everything very minutely and detailed explained, so that this needs to be explained to the world, so that people can take to a very clearly defined process for purifying their heart. We can see that without a very clear process, very clear steps, like the nectar of devotion, it's the science of devotional service, Prabhupada says. Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it just explains everything in detail, how to make advancement, to go all the way from the point of being a completely sinful, living a conditioned soul in the material world with no notion of God, all the way up to going back to Godhead, even in this very lifetime for a serious practitioner. We just don't necessarily find that in all traditions, everybody's having this transformation of heart, transformation of their qualities. So, yeah, it's a very well-made point to add to this, that although from one perspective it might seem, some might say, well, that sounds somewhat derisive or sectarian to say that your book, whatever your book means, because the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, they were around, for a very, very long time before I ever stumbled upon them, right? So they're not really my books, they're not really ours. Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita between two opposing armies, just to make the statement that this doesn't belong to anybody, this knowledge is for everybody, anybody who wants to benefit from it. So it's not really my book, but they might say, okay, your book, you say, is the real dictionary, the full dictionary, and you say that their books are the abridged dictionary. So how can you answer that? Well, just like with the full dictionary and the abridged dictionary, you can tell somebody, well, why don't you take these two dictionaries, open them up, compare them yourself, and you tell me which one is the abridged and which one is the full. So that can actually be experimenting one's own self. Like, okay, take open the books, and you decide. I'll leave it to you. I don't need to decide for you. This is what we're presenting, and you can take it up. You can look in the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and see if there's a more elaborate and complete science of God described in there. So it's not actually any more sectarian than the actual existence of full and abridged dictionaries, or the existence of mathematics books which focus on addition and subtraction versus mathematics books which focus on algebra and calculus. And if you say that, well, calculus is more advanced than addition and subtraction, somebody might object, saying like, well, hey, I'm in first grade and I only know addition and subtraction, and I think your statement is sectarian. It's like, but you can look in the books and you can tell me if you understand calculus, after having learned addition and subtraction. So that can actually be experienced by one's own investigation, with good use of one's intelligence. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up, and we'll go ahead and end class here. I'm sorry for going over time. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Shantatma Prabhu ki jai.
Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.